We are live with Keirsten Greggs. Good afternoon. Welcome to the show. Welcome to LinkedIn Live with Jack Kelly.
Yes, thank you for having me, Jack. I always enjoy not only talking to you, but being on this side of the mic and not being the one that's responsible for driving the conversation and asking the questions.
So you like it on the other side where
I
can ask you the questions.
I like it on this side too,
okay.
but
right.
I don't get to do this as much as I used to. So,
well, cool. So maybe we could start off and you could tell a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
I am Keirsten Greggs. I've been in talent acquisition for 23 years. I'm a consultant, and I go by TRAP recruiter, which means trust, relationship building, accountability, and a proactive approach.
Wait a minute. I thought that was a music term. I'm confused now.
It's a music term, but it's also an acronym. So it's just my philosophy on how I like to do recruiting. And like I said, I like to bridge the gap between job seekers and employers, especially those from historically excluded and marginalized communities.
And I understand right now you're in between roles, right? So you're a talent acquisition professional, but at the same time, you're keeping your eyes open.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I got to tell you, I really applaud that because I can tell you from just a guy's point of view, if you haven't noticed, guys have big egos and they wrap themselves up in the identity of their job and career. And if they are in between roles, oftentimes they don't tell anybody, and they don't tell anybody, how can anyone help you? So I really love the fact that you're coming on the show and being forthright and saying, hey, I'm also looking. So how is the search going? How is it for you as a talent acquisition person looking around?
Yeah, that's always a difficult point, a difficult spot to be in. First and foremost, the first time, well, not the first time, but the last time I was laid off in 2016, right before I started Trap Recruiter, I didn't tell people because I had gotten to a certain level of my career that people were coming to me for consultation. People were coming to me to advise. People were coming to me for strategy. And it did not feel authentic for me to offer people services when I wasn't employed. So when you said it's tied up in your identity, I think for myself and any other HR or TA folks who are experiencing a job gap, there is a sense of like, am I good at my job? Like, how did this happen to me? Why am I in this situation? And then if it takes you longer than, the 90 days that most people think it takes you to get a job, that is the average. But if it takes you 6 months, if you're working on month 8, or if you've had 10 interviews this month, or if you've had, 3 rejections and you've gotten to the final round in a certain number of interviews, like you start to feel like maybe you're not as good as other people are, or maybe you need to switch to do a different role inside of an organization. Maybe you don't need to be a recruiter anymore, because there's that sense of, well, I'm a recruiter, so if I can't find a job, how can I help other people find a job?
See, I'm kind of surprised you said that because you come across very confident. And just because maybe you're in between roles doesn't mean you lost all the experience you had for how many years did you say? 20 years? How
23. Yeah, but when I was laid off, I was like at year 16, it was my second layoff. I got laid off right after September 11th. And I had just started I started recruiting in 2000. So I was in a company for 9 months, in a defense contracting company, as a matter of fact. And I got laid off after September 11th. And that was difficult. But what I did was I went into my next role, I went into a coordinator role in a very, very high paced environment. I had already come out, I'd already had agency experience. Then I had, corporate experience. And then I took a job again, what I call an in-between job, while I was looking for another full-time recruiting role. And I worked as a recruiting coordinator. And that got me to really fall in love with what goes into being a recruiter, like the support that recruiters need to get their jobs done, the support that recruiters need to be effective, the support that recruiters need to offer a favorable candidate experience and offer support to hiring managers, and just being that go-between at times when the recruiter is not available, but they've got 5 other positions and you've got 4 hiring managers asking you for a status update and 27 job seekers asking you for a status update. That I got to be that person. And after that, it was all cool. And then I got laid off again, and I was like, "This is crazy!"
Like, what's happening?
Yeah,
Why does everyone hate me?
Yeah, I was like, "Come on, like, what am I going to do?" But at that point, it was like, I had built up enough network that I could
Mhm.
like pick up the phone. People like, "Oh, you're available?" Like, yeah, come on, like, come on over here. But that time in 2016 was a little different for me. Some of it wasn't necessarily that I didn't think I was good at my job. I think I lost a bit of trust and a bit of hope in the people that I had. Like, I left a job to go to the job I was laid off from.
Mhm.
Um, and they didn't tell me what was going on in the organization, that they were about to divest that entire part of the company. So I kind of came in to fix the process and get them in compliance, so that when they were ready to go to the board and be like, "Hey, look, at least they were services companies, so that everything looked right." Um, and I did that in a few months. When that was it, like, I was done. And I didn't know that's what was going to be the case. So I was like really angry, um, and, really down on myself. But people came to me, the few people that did know I was looking, the time I was already blogging with Performance I Create, recruiter problems memes, like people knew what that was. And again, the me being visible, people didn't know I was looking for a role. And then someone came to me about a job fair they were doing. They wanted a speaker to talk to the job seekers about ways to be more attractive to the employers that were there. And I told him, I said, before I agree, we need to have a conversation. And I told them, I was like, I'm out of work. And he was like, so, and that was like what really kind of got me to be like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, you still have something to offer and you can still do this. So that's how Trap Recruiter came about. But the confidence does, you know, like the other
Yeah.
Friday, I got like three rejections, like back to back, like bang, bang, bang. And I was like, I'm just gonna go to sleep. I'm logging
Yeah.
off for the
All right.
weekend.
So let's unpack some of this, because this is like really good stuff that
Yeah.
you shared. No particular order. I'm embarrassed to say, like, I was going to say for the audience, but I want to know for myself, really.
Okay.
What's the difference between a talent acquisition person and a recruiter and an HR
Mm.
person? I
Okay.
mean, are they kind of sort of similar? It depends, or so people understand, because I think also a lot of times people don't understand like what a recruiter does, whether it's like a contingent recruiter, executive,
Yeah.
search recruiter and so forth. So like talent acquisition, how would you define that? Is that
So talent acquisition, I think of as the umbrella where we used to think of recruiters
Mhm.
being a part of HR, and they still are in some organizations. It
Right?
just depends. In some organizations, the entirety of the talent acquisition department is under an HR
Mm.
umbrella. But just like there are other roles in human resources outside of a business partner, compensation, benefits, employee relations, compliance, there's other roles inside of talent acquisition as well. Every TA person is not a client facing or a full life cycle recruiter, meaning they're not the ones that are taking the job orders, interfacing with the hiring manager, going out and getting candidates, bringing them back, putting out the offer, and being responsible for guiding the person through the process. So there's, like I mentioned, talent acquisition
Mhm.
coordinators. Those are your support team. Like, we couldn't do our jobs if they weren't there. there's operations, which is where I've spent the end of like this half of my career has been in operations, where I work with systems and processes, and I do audits, and I help folks with strategy. There's talent attraction, employer branding. There's still recruiters, there's sourcers that again are their entire, like they're an entire different skill set. It takes an entirely different muscle to be a sourcer. I should say just a sourcer, because I'm not trying to minimize what they do. And I think a lot of times we have minimized that. We've looked at sourcing as like the step before becoming like a full-blown recruiter, but that's an entirely different muscle. And especially with all of the technology that we now have available to us, like sourcers kick butt, like 100%. So there's other roles within TA that are not necessarily that forward-facing recruiter or that client-facing recruiter.
No, that's really helpful. And to then fast forward to when you were talking about just recently that you had some back-to-back, hey, thank you, Keirsten, but we're going in a different direction. Thank you, but whatever it might be. And it's like, I'm just going to sleep. How do you deal, either for yourself, or would you like to share with people, what are some ways, because a lot of people going through this, they were laid off, they're in between jobs, they're worried about losing their jobs. How do you deal with that mindset, with the emotional stress, the mental health of somebody, just to keep going when you keep getting rejected, which is so hard to keep going when that happens?
I don't take it personal, meaning that it is personal, but it's not an indictment on how good I am. And I think, is this the cup I have? Yeah. So I didn't even realize it, but I have my no cup today, which means next opportunity. So every no gets me closer to my next opportunity.
Yes.
Because if they don't tell me goodbye, I'm still sitting around waiting for the, and I may, hold off on the number of other opportunities that I pursue. So it gets difficult. And like I said, like the other Friday was hard for me. And I just knew, like, just take a rest, like take a break.
So like you just walk. Well, I'll tell you, as a recruiter, first of all, number one, it's interesting that's a kind of a mantra, that, for every no, it's one step closer to a yes. It's like one of those things that could kind of keep you motivated, because like, okay, I called up, 3 clients to get a job order. It didn't happen. The next one, it's going to happen. Then the next one's going to happen. And eventually it does happen if you keep trying. Similarly, it's the same thing with looking for a job. Eventually it'll happen. You just got to keep trying and trying and trying. But what I find out is this, and I wonder if you see this as a talent acquisition person or even in yourself, is that when you go to interviews, they want to see you like upbeat, it makes sense, upbeat, positive, motivated, excited, all that kind of stuff. But it's hard to do when like you get rejection after rejection after rejection. It's like super hard to do. Like, how do you turn that around and be authentic? Not like a fake, like, oh, hey, I'm happy.
So
like,
again, just by virtue of my job, I have a lot of practice with that, because we recruiters, when you're client facing, when you're a full life cycle recruiter, you're talking to people all day long. And some days you are not feeling it. Some days you are, as Shally says, below the line. Like, I'm below the line. Like, and if I cross it, somebody's going to get my goat, like it's going to be a difficult time. So I got into the practice of telling people, hey, listen, I'm not necessarily going to cancel a phone screen, for example, if I'm, on the side of the recruiter, but I'm going to say, please excuse me. Or if someone says, like, if I get a sense that they're kind of, or a hiring manager I'm having a meeting with, I would say, listen, like, I'm not having a good day. But I really do want to, get through this, and I want to give you the best I can.
I like that.
That's all I can do.
You want to hear a hack that I do?
What's that?
So let's say I'm just striking out, because like with recruiting, you fail way more often than you succeed. I mean, that's just how it works, because you could only have that one person who gets the job, and you might have 10 other people who didn't get the job. So like oftentimes, you're going to work really hard and not find it. So what I do is I have this mental hack where I realize if I keep going right now, I'm just going to be like cranky and ornery and end up
Mhm.
getting into a fight and getting into an argument and losing my temper. Because you know yourself, you know how like, and
Yeah.
so I step away from the desk. Let's say this is pre-COVID, like we were in, the office and whatever. Walk out of the office, go to the bathroom, put cold water on my face, maybe walk around the block and say to myself, whatever happened before is over, doesn't exist, never happened. It's done. It's in the past. Can't change the past.
Yeah.
Right new, starting fresh. And it sounds so hokey when I say it out loud, but it works. It's the weirdest thing because it's almost
Yeah.
like you do a reboot where you're like, oh no, that's over with. I'm not gonna ruminate over it. I'm not gonna obsess over it. Done. Nothing I could do about it. Well, but I can do something about the future. So
Yeah.
that helps a lot. I think that's helpful for people to kind of find their own mantras, right? Their own like affirmations or manifestations to get that mindset when you're having trouble either looking for a job, or even if you're not looking for a job, you're just in your company and you can't kind of break through and get to the next level,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I had one of those moments even yesterday. And I just I I I talked to two people about what I was going through, and they're just like, they're like, they're like, step aside, like take a break. And
Yeah,
I knew I had to be on camera twice
that's hard.
yesterday, but at the end of the day, because I reset and then I like didn't come in with this like fake, everything's great, this like, oh, I'm so awesome. And my shout out to my friend Sarah Morgan. I think a lot of you guys know who she is, the Buzz on HR. She told me one day, because I kept, trying to trick myself into being positive, like having a positive mindset. I'm like, don't think negative thoughts. So it's the opposite of that's positive thoughts. And she's like, there's such thing as neutral thoughts. She was like, your brain knows when you're lying to it. Your brain knows when you're not okay. So just be neutral. Like, what's the neutral thought for this? And I was
I
like,
love you. I love you
no.
said that because I don't know. There was some athlete who I sort of interviewed said that, and I never thought of
Mhm.
that before. It's like they defaulted to I'm just going to be neutral. I'm
Yeah.
gonna and I never like, what are you talking about? And then as he was going through, just like you're saying, it's just like,
Yeah.
all right, I don't have to go on this emotional roller coaster
Yeah.
because with your career, whether a job, looking for a job, trying to get a promotion, you're on these crazy roller coasters all the time with your
Hmm.
emotions. So it's like, okay, let me just be neutral.
Yeah.
Don't get too crazy with the highs. Don't get too crazy with the lows. Just
Yeah, I call it
neutral.
shoots and ladders. I always say recruiting's like shoots and ladders. If you ever played that game as a
Yeah.
kid,
So, but a way you want to avoid those shoots, like you want to just go like
you
straight
can't.
through,
You
no
can't
shoot.
decide the dice. I mean, unless you're good at rolling the dice, I don't
Yeah.
know.
So, so how does you brought something up? We talked a little bit this before we went on air
Mhm.
that you come across very happy, very confident, and is that sometimes a drawback? Because when people see somebody who come across successful, they come across happy, put together, then people are like, oh, I don't have to help her. She's got it, she's doing okay. And yet you need that help, but they're not helping because they think, oh, you got your act together. Now, is that a weird thing that happens to people? Is that a common occurrence?
It happens, but I have learned to tell people when I need help. And
Yeah.
that's the most difficult thing for me is saying when I need help. Like I had a situation yesterday and
Mhm.
I reverted back to my old way, which was don't tell them that there was a problem until I've already solved it.
Mhm.
And I've been doing that since childhood, according to my parents. Like they never knew that I was in trouble, but we always had like an open and honest relationship. So like if I did something, I would come to them and tell them what I did and how I solved it, instead of allowing them the space to guide me to
Mhm.
solve it. So i I did that again yesterday, but I was under a time crunch. So but when it comes to like when people reach out to me, and like even now, like I have a number of folks who I am helping get jobs, or I have a number of formally and informally, that all day long we're sharing the roles that we see come across that may or may not fit, or we're offering encouragement to one another, or we're sharing their posts, or we're doing all these things to make sure that people know. But it's just a matter of me being honest. It's a matter of me saying, no, I'm not okay. Yes, I'm managing, but I would be better if
Right.
this happened. And I think we were talking before. I was like, I don't know where that came from. This shame, like you said, it was ego, but like, why is it a shame to be looking for a job? Like, why do we feel shame for that? And I don't have the answer.
I got the answer. Can I give you the answer? My
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
It's like the way our society is constructed. It's built on, you have to be successful, you have to be a winner, you have to make a lot of money, you have to have the big house, you have to have the big expensive car, you have to take the really cool vacations. You have to put your kids are going to the right universities. When they graduate, they go to the right schools. And there's so much societal pressure on it that you have to play this game. And people, most people, not everyone play that game. And I think it really harms folks because you end up doing things that you shouldn't do. I can't tell you how many people in recruiting where they'll look for a job and we'll talk about salary and go, oh, I can't take this and that my nut is, and when they say nut, it's like they have finances, like, the amount of money I'm spending on cars and this and nannies and mortgages, whatever, is so high, I can't take that job. So it's like, you're playing this game, this ego game, and you can't get a certain job because you're so over leveraged. That's crazy. So like, I think people fall into this thing where, you have to be, you always have to be, how are you doing? I'm doing great. I'm doing wonderful.
I'm not.
Yeah, right. And people don't say that. And more people should say that. Like, like, hey, no, I'm not really doing well. I could use some help. And see, I think that's what happens too often,
Yeah. Well, I love how everyone is sharing their stories, especially on LinkedIn. Folks are saying, here's who I am and here's what I'm looking for. I was affected by a layoff, or I'm moving to a new city, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But like I said before we went live, for every person who does that, there's 4 more who are ashamed and who won't turn on that open to work banner, who won't, for whatever reason, who won't reach out, or maybe they don't know how.
See, that's what we're going to ask you. So I'm glad that, like, thanks for leading into it. What would you suggest? Even if we don't have an answer, we can maybe work it through. Like, what can people say when they need the help, but like they're a normal person, they're a little scared to ask for help. They're worried, they're ashamed, they feel weird. Like, what can you do to tap into your network, friends, colleagues, coworkers, past coworkers, to say, hey, I need help? Like, or is that what you just do? Simple as that.
Start with the people that you're closest to and that you trust the most. And in a lot of instances, they will advocate for you. I see those posts every day too, where it's a recruiter or it's a software engineer that's like, hey, I used to work with Jack Kelly and they're an awesome engineer. Here are, their thing. If you see any jobs in this, and this, please share. Like people that do have a larger network or that are more connected to the right people are doing that as well. But for folks who don't have that big of a network, start close, and then it'll start to grow.
And then what? So you just would go and reach out to somebody, maybe online,
reach out to someone
and say, hey, I could use some help. I'm looking. And one of the things, I'm curious how you feel this, when you have those banners out there, open to work, it's fine. But sometimes to me, it's frustrating because they don't say what they want to do or like how we could help. So then it's like, I feel like I would help, but I don't even know what you do. I don't know what you're looking to do.
Yeah. Or that the old, I'm open to anything.
Yeah. That's not helpful.
Yeah. Are you really? No.
So maybe you should, if someone has those banners, whatever, to be very specific, right? Like
Mhm.
how you could help me. Like, hey, this is Jack, this is Kirsten. Here's how you can help me. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I'm looking to do 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
And here's the companies I'm interested in. Do you know anybody? So I guess to be very specific about the ask.
Be
Does that?
specific, be as specific as you can be about the ask. 'Cause like I said, again, some people don't always know.
Mm.
I know folks that are in transition and wanting to go from one job to an entirely different field, industry, and role. And they have the transferable skills, but they don't necessarily know how to show that they can apply them in a new way.
See, that's a great topic because I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Okay.
There's a big push, particularly on LinkedIn, that say hire for skills. And that sounds nice, right? Sounds so nice. Hey, skills, crossover skills. But what I find out as a recruiter, if somebody may have skills, but it's not in that sector, there's not a lot of interest. So it almost is worse for people because then like, wait, you keep telling me they're hiring for skills, but I have the skills, but I don't have the industry experience. So they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
What do you see with that? Like,
It
am I
happened to
missing something?
me. No, it definitely happened to me. Um, there was a time where recruiters, regardless of industry, folks started to realize that the way that third party, or what we used to call agency recruiters, the
Mhm.
way that we were trained was like, oh, those were going to be, the recruiters that you wanted in your corporate seats, so that you didn't have to train them, so that you didn't have to, there wasn't a heavy lift of showing them how to read job postings, how to do an intake call with the hiring manager, how to negotiate an offer. Excuse me. So me having started in an agency, like I had that tick, but me coming from the defense and intel industry, working with highly cleared people, it was hard. Like it was very difficult for me to get an Amazon or a Google or a high tech company to even look at me, because they didn't understand. Like they saw, like in their mind, they saw that I hired people with security clearances, but didn't realize that like I did a huge project where we brought in the whole IT department back into the company I was working for. Like, and I went on the road and like did a whole thing, like service delivery, all stuff that you do in your organization. I've done executive recruiting. I had done executive recruiting. I had done a great deal of IT and cybersecurity recruiting. The only differentiator was that my folks also had to have a security clearance of some sort, but they couldn't see how that crossed over. Now, I'm not going to say that there's always there's like any recruiter can do anything, because there are some that do specialize in certain things. And I can understand how a healthcare recruiter how a healthcare company specifically may lean more to wanting to look at healthcare recruiters,
Mhm.
or folks that have a background in that, because they know the language. They probably already have an established network. They know where to look. They know the nuances and the ins and outs of that. But that's not to say that someone who's coming from tech can't learn how to do that job, and that learning curve is going to be extremely steep, because a lot of times it's not. It's just a matter of like learning how to do it that way.
So what do you think? Do you think maybe though, if someone's really keen on pivoting to a different industry, a different sector, to try to fashion a way to say, here's how my skills cross over, but then maybe take some online courses or maybe go back to school for something
Absolutely.
or get a
Absolutely.
license or accreditation? Is that maybe helpful?
It's absolutely helpful. I saw a story on, what do you call it now? X. Yes, I
Yes.
saw I
Yeah.
saw a X post. I don't know
Yeah.
what they're called now, but it was a series, and
Yeah.
this person was talking about they wanted a certain type of job and
Hmm.
spent the time like doing research, learning what it took to do that job, do it all this, like, and they had like gotten a few interviews at first, but they kept getting turned down. So they were like, okay, what am I missing? What do I need to do? And they spent a time, like a few months, just learning the job that they wanted, learning the role, getting the certs, getting the industry experiences, like knowing even knowing who their competitor, who that company's competitors were, and doing all that. So it's just it takes time. Like like none of this stuff happens overnight, and the times that it does, those are the ones that we talk about. Like these overnight success stories are the ones that we're most excited about. But those are not the state. Like those are the exceptions. Like those things are not the rules.
Right. It's so rare, right? The Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg, the Elon Musks, those are the point oh 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 oh
Exceptions.
oh oh
Yes.
oh oh 1%. It's like so
Yeah.
rare. And then like I tell people, that who get frustrated with it, it's not a science. That's what's I think frustrates a lot of people. It's not math. It's not like you do 1 and 1 is 2. It's like you could be the best person. You went to Yale and Harvard and all this stuff, but you're still knocking your head against the wall to find the right thing. And then some other person just falls into a job just like that. And that's also, I think, what drives people nuts is that
Yeah.
it's not like, hey, if I do this, is exactly going to work. No, sometimes yes, sometimes no. You have to be in the right place, the right time, be a little lucky, have
Mhm.
everything aligned. So I think that adds to that frustration too. What do you think?
Oh, it does. And what's that quote? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes, it's
Yeah. And
so true.
that's another thing that, I still work on. But when I see myself like wondering, like, well, this person sucks.
Right,
Like,
how did they get in that role? That should be me.
you're a horrible person. They
It's
could,
so
I'm like,
true. See, it's one of those things that everyone thinks about. You don't want to say it out loud, but they all think it's like, what? That should be
yes,
my life. I don't understand it.
exact.
How did this
Yeah, don't
happen?
do that to yourself. Like, and when you do, be like, oh, you know what? Wrong. Because it's someone that, because I promise you, there's someone that thinks that about you too.
All right, all right. Can I get a little dark here for a minute?
Always.
Sometimes, if you look at, and this is really weird, if you look at very famous, wealthy, successful people, oftentimes they have great tragedies in their families. Like, I don't want to get all dark and whatever, but like now they mentioned, if you ever Google it, you'll see it's really weird how that, because you look at these people like, oh, they have everything. Look, the big mansion.
Yeah.
And then you like then if you learn about really what's going on behind the scenes, you're like, yikes, I wouldn't trade
Yeah.
this for like, wow, this is, yeah, really bad stuff. Deaths in the family, kids on drugs, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're people too. I think everyone has their stuff, and we don't realize
Mhm.
that other folks are going through things too. And I think that sometimes clouds our judgment, especially in the age of social media, where we tend to only amplify the good, where we tend to only highlight, the things that we consider great or that we think are want to be celebrated. I mean, you know me, I've got on my business mullet right now, but but I have on Crocs. My feet are perched on my elliptical, like my under desk elliptical. Um, I have my background on because I need to clean up my office. Like
Yeah.
there's stuff going on behind the scenes. Like the mask is on, so
Yeah. How good it would be if you didn't have to do all that, right?
I
You know,
got
we,
there briefly during the
yeah.
pandemic where, and I think one day I was on with you and Mark, and
Mhm.
I was just looking raggedy. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's why I was before the show. I'll give a little insight here. I was putting on trap music because you and Mark were making fun of me because I didn't know what trap music was. So I purposely was listening to trap music. So this time around, I would be more, familiar with it.
yeah, but I didn't even like wear like a graphic tee or anything. I put on a blazer and some jewelry and, you know, so I didn't know I didn't know I was getting myself into, but
Yeah.
I'm liking the Mark Zuckerberg black t-shirt situation you got going on.
It's so easy for guys. See, guys, it's easy. We have uniforms. You have like the t-shirt and jeans. If you're a
Yeah.
podcaster, right? That's the
Okay.
uniform. You have the t-shirt and jeans. If back in the day when you go to the office, you have the blue suit, white shirt, like, blue tie, boom,
Yeah.
that's it. No thought involved. Easy
Yeah.
peasy. That's it. So, hey, let me ask on a macro level, what are you seeing in talent acquisition now? Because
Mm,
HR, talent acquisition, recruiters, they're the canaries in the coal mine because they see what's going on first, because both good and bad. Because when they're hiring, they see the hiring. When layoffs, they see the layoffs. A lot of
yep,
times, the recruiters, talent acquisition, HR get laid off first
yep.
because there's no business. What among your peers, like what's the buzz? What are you seeing? Hiring, no hiring? What's going on?
It's not as robust as it
Mhm.
was this time last September, I don't think. And when I did see that uptick in recruiters and HR people getting laid off, especially some that had been like not individual contributors,
Mhm.
like director level, vice president level, and their entire departments getting cut, that says to me that the staffing plan into the next 2 quarters is not looking good. Like they don't think there's going to be a lot of hiring coming up. Um, I hope I'm wrong, but I really I've learned not to make too many predictions,
Mhm.
um, given what we've gone through for the past almost 3 years. But I don't see as big of a September surge as I have in the past of folks to ups getting ready to hire people, for the holiday season and things like that. Maybe some things will come through, maybe more things will come through in January. Maybe January will be, an even bigger month than it normally is. January is a good time to look for jobs as well, because people that who's waiting for their annual bonuses that they
Mhm.
get in December, they'll stay until they get their bonus, and then they don't come back the next year. So then the roles open, or again, people are looking to make up in September. That's usually the month folks to really want to start looking for jobs, because that's usually like we're trying to get to the end of the year. We've got all, the rest of this money to spend. We've got some projects to do. We might bring on some contractors for, because we know that people are going to be going on leave and things like that, or to pick up the slack or the input, or I mean, see the uptick in work that needs to be done. But I'm just not seeing as much of it as I
Mhm.
as I was. What I am seeing though, and I'm actually surprised, given the fact that that multiple studies have been done now with this return to office, for roles that don't that were done remotely and done remotely well. And like looking at places like Wells Fargo that laid off folks who were working remotely for years, even before the pandemic, been with the company 20, 30 years, like laid them off because they didn't live a commutable distance to one of the offices. Like that's crazy to me.
Mhm.
Or they're saying, oh, remote work, but you have to live in this state, or you have to live within 50 miles, or you have to come in 2 days a week. Like, for what? We've been doing the job. And I'm seeing a lot of those, and I'm seeing a lot of roles opening up in areas where I'm like, they don't have enough people. There's not enough available talent in this industry or in this role to fill these jobs. Like somebody's gonna have to move.
So what I'm hearing is like, where among your cohorts, it seems a little slow. There's
Hmm.
not a, a big appetite to hire. And because of that, it sounds like for, tell me if this makes sense then. Do you think for the people watching this now and who are watching on replay, maybe they should tailor the way they're looking and say, hey, let's say they have a job and, but they were open to looking. Would it then make sense for them to maybe hyper focus on their own job within the organization for the short term to play it safe and try to grow internally if there's not those external roles?
I don't want to tell people not to go after the job
Mhm.
that they desire or the career that they desire. Absolutely do that. Um, I don't think you should have to wait or feel a type of way. And I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a whole other part of this. While I do know a great deal of people who've been laid off, I also know a lot of people who stayed, and they're overloaded.
Mhm.
Like they have a lot of work to do, and the hiring may be slowing because they just don't have the bandwidth. The hiring may be slowing because they're tired and they're burnt out. and they don't have enough, but it becomes an issue. Like I never understood why you would lay off an entire recruiting department just to bring them back, or entire HR department just to bring them back 4 or 5 months later after after your staff has made its bonuses, or after
Mhm.
you've gotten your numbers to look the way that you want them to look, just to bring them back, and then have to spend that time again searching for them and interviewing. And these are the people that you laid off. Like, so what do you do?
So it sounds like a couple of things. One, from what we're saying, still keep looking for a job, even if it's
Mhm.
slow moving, to maybe
Yes.
hedge your bets. So you could do both, try to grow internally, but simultaneously conduct a bit of a stealth search, because you don't want to lose your job, but do a stealth search, checking in with recruiters, with your network to see what's out there. So this way you kind of have two things going on,
It's
holding on
always
to your
easier.
job, but then
Yeah.
keeping for something else.
It's always easier to
Yeah.
find a job when you already have a job.
Yeah. And are you seeing any trends? Because a lot of times what happens too is, instead of hiring full-time permanent people, they rely on gig, contract, temp. Are you seeing in talent acquisition more of that happening now?
No, I'm actually seeing more. I'm because I would prefer a contract or a gig
Mhm.
position, but I'm actually seeing more full-time roles
Oh, really?
actually
Okay.
in recruiting.
That's interesting, because usually, like I say, like if things are getting a little like belt tightening, they rather use the contracts, because like what you said, so then they could just let go of them and say, all right, we'll let go. And then if we need them, we'll bring them back again. So that's kind of a positive sign, though. To me, that's
Yeah,
positive that they're doing the full-time permanent, because because then if you leave, it's severance, it's more of a hassle than a contract. So that's kind of good. I'm trying to find the good news in here.
yeah.
Trying
No,
to,
there's good. Like I don't think everything's daunting. Like I said, but I don't think things are as
Mhm.
robust as some people would like to pretend they are. I have my days where I have to log out completely, like not go on any of the apps, because if I see, oh, the economy's doing so great, we added this many jobs, I'm like, no, you didn't. Stop saying that. Like, like data, like stop lying on the data. Like,
Why do you
yes,
say
they
that? I'm
will,
curious. Well,
because a lot of the jobs that they were accounting for were recovery, and especially in June, um like they had to go back and redo it. Like this is the actual number, and it was significantly less than what they originally said. So, and unemployment too, like those unemployment numbers are a little, they're, while they're true, they don't tell the whole story.
I'm so
Because
glad you say that, because I'm like that guy, that old man who's shaking his fist at the clouds saying, this is not right. This is not true.
uh,
Seriously, it drives me up a wall, because I agree with you. Give you a couple examples. Now, this is going to be really boring for everybody, so you can take a nap while I say this, but it's important because it helps out. To Kirsten's point, give you one example. They have something called a birth death model,
oh,
and it's not like people, babies getting birth. They say, okay, that means how many companies were started and then how many people work in those companies, but they're not based on any real people. It's a model. So
oh,
if it's a model, they can tweak it any way they want, that's like, so you're just making up numbers. It's the
mhm,
craziest thing. And so that what happens is, like, who knows if that's true? And then they have adjustments for seasonality. Oh, it's
yeah.
this holiday season, so we're going to change it. But again, not real numbers. It's just a model, which is, how do you do that? Then you have this thing also called the household survey,
Okay.
which you have one where companies self-report how many people got new jobs, but then also the government will call you or me up and say, hey, are you working? If so, how much have you worked?
Oh,
And
they
so
don't
forth.
call me.
Never. I don't know anybody who ever got a call. So
Oh,
they rely on that, right? And who in their right mind is going to pick up? First of all, not many people have a landline. So,
yeah.
like, how are you going to call? And then if you get someone from, hi, I'm Jack from the government. Can you tell me your social security number? Where do you work? How many hours did you work? How much you get paid? Who's going to answer that? So, like, there's
Older
so
people.
many holes in there. Like, so, and I think what gets me, and I think we're on the same page here, that it frustrates people because they act like it's so great. And then if you can't find a job, they're like, what's wrong with me? And their family and friends are like, what's wrong with you? The numbers are so great. There's so many jobs added, because that's the narrative, but that's not true. So it makes
It's
people
not
feel
true.
worse,
Yeah.
because if it was bad, then everyone could say, oh yeah, it's really bad, so that's why you're not getting a job. But it's really good, so something must be wrong with you and me because we're not getting it. And
Yeah.
that to me is really problematic, because it hurts the self-esteem of people, the confidence of people.
Yeah. There was, what is this? Today's Thursday, right? So I was looking at my Facebook memories, and I actually had a post that said something like, there's jobs out there, people are hiring. And then I showed a sign that said hiring, and it was like HIRRING. And I was like, the jobs they're talking about, like the ones that no one wants. Like,
It's wait, but that's
yeah,
what it
there's
is.
jobs, but are you going to work them?
The
Probably not.
jobs, right? The jobs that are open are really the ones that people don't really want to take those jobs.
Yeah.
They're not really good jobs. And then also they don't get paid well, they're not good jobs. And then people having 2, 3 jobs. This is what's weird too.
Yes.
They'll say like, look at all these job numbers. Well, it's like, these people with low wage workers can't run a household by just one job. So they have to have 3 or 4 gigs.
Multiple. Mhm.
But they don't report that, which again is so frustrating, misleading to people.
Or people that, the unemployment numbers go by who's receiving unemployment. What about all the people that no longer eligible for unemployment,
The
or who were
long-term
never
unemployed.
eligible
Yes.
because they had gig jobs, like you
Mhm.
said, they worked at they worked at Uber, they worked at Lyft, DoorDash, doing these things, and maybe they didn't earn, save enough in their unemployment, or in their contract where they could even qualify for unemployment. So
But this is good, because I think stuff like this, think about it. You don't see this. And this is what drives me mad. Like, you would think you would see this on, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, like they would talk about it, and no one does. And it's really devastating to the people who are trying to find jobs or can't advance, because then they think it's them, but it's really, they're not getting the real story. So at least we can kind of share this stuff with people, so the light bulb could go on, go,
yeah.
oh, all right. I don't feel as bad. I might still be looking for a job, but I don't feel as bad now, because now I realize, this is what's really going on. And that's why it's so hard to find something, because it's not as good as people are making it out to be.
No, but thankfully it's not as bad either. It's not as daunting as I can make it out to be on those bad days.
Well, you know what? When you said you look back at that, like, looking back at whatever Facebook that you're seeing, I thought you were going to go back to like 2020, where then that was nuts. Where like, 20,000, like just thousands and thousands and thousands of people getting laid off. That was just unbelievable.
Yeah, no, that's what
I thought you were going to go to.
I did a lot. Well, that was an entirely different situation. And like I said, I still think now, it's because that was new.
Mhm.
It left a lot of space. We were talking about it. Like, a lot of people were given a platform to share things, share their experiences, share their knowledge, share what's going on. But now we're kind of pretending like everything is back to normal, so to speak. But what does normal mean anymore? Like, we never decided. And we're not talking about it anymore, because like you said, tens of thousands of people aren't getting laid off every day. Like whole companies aren't shutting down because they need their folks in-house and the government says we can't go to work. So that's not happening anymore. But there is a sense of, like you said, like, well, where are all these jobs? And why don't I have one of them?
So what do you think for yourself, if you don't mind me asking? Do you feel that there is a good likelihood, or this might take a really long time? Do you have any sense of how it's going?
Yeah, I don't really know. I can't say. I will say that I have that I've not been looking for 8 months like some people I know. I've not been looking for 6 months like some people that I know. But the fact that, like, I'm not getting close in the
Mhm.
time that I have been diligent and looking, like, yeah, I have to decide, like, how much time are you really going to put into this until you just till you decide to, shift, do a different strategy, do something else. And I haven't figured that part out yet.
You think some of the challenges are this? Because I always worked as a third party,
Okay.
in my search firm. So I never worked at a company, the companies would be my clients. They'd ask
Yes.
to help. A couple of things I find out that I think mucks up the whole system is this. Like, one of the things is hiring by consensus, meaning, like, it used to be when I first started
Mm.
recruiting, and let's say you were the hiring manager, I could go right to you, you and I will chat. You'll give me feedback on the candidate. I'll give that information to the candidate so he or she could do better. And then that goes throughout the whole process, keeping that open door, communications. And it would go much more smoothly. Doesn't mean everybody would get a job, but just the whole process it was more pleasant because you would get advice throughout the whole thing. You know where you stand, and you're not getting ghosted. And now what happens is that you need to meet with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people over the course of 6 months,
Yeah.
and everyone has to agree. And if you just have one person who disagrees, and that one person is tangentially related to the whole thing anyway, they're like, no, and you have to start all over again. So it's like it's not built right. It just doesn't seem to make sense why that happens.
Yeah, I see folks who, and I've been involved in that, but from a TA
Mhm.
partnership perspective, like sometimes the in-house recruiter or even the third, like we've got to be able to say, listen, is this necessary? Is talking to all these people necessary? And getting to the bottom of why they are, keep extending it, keep extending it. I've been in those situations where, like, well, let me see one other person. Well, let's have them talk to bill and
Right.
accounting because um, when it's time to submit invoices for this project, they're going to have to email Bill. And I'm like,
It's
we
like
have to
so
see,
not
we have to
necessary,
see,
right?
we have to see if they can get along.
Right.
Like, what?
It's silly. It's ridiculous because no one, I think no one wants to make that decision because they don't want to make
Yeah.
the decision. And if they're wrong,
They don't want to
they're
make
going to lose.
the wrong decision. But yes.
And they're scared. They're scared to be that person who made the wrong decision, and they're going to point the finger at me for making that bad hire.
Yep.
And it's easier to say it wasn't just person two, and that bill
Yeah.
too. So don't blame, and just messes it up, and it takes forever.
It does. I try to stay far away from those. Like I get upfront. What is the interview like what is the process? Like how long are we going to do this? How many rounds? Like what are the rounds? How many people are they going to talk? So it's another thing, like they're like, oh, there's only 2 rounds of interviews, but that's 15 people. No, that's too many people. That's too many people. Like how many people, how many rounds are you and how soon after are you going to make a decision? Like we need to know that upfront.
Right. And that's not asking much out of life, right? That's
It's
that's
not.
so it's very reasonable, right? Like, how long is it going to take? Who am I going to meet with? Can I get a
Yeah.
little background on who I'm going to meet with? I would even add this. Like, I think it's only fair if you are you have to disclose like who that boss is and a little bit about the person. Have they ever been written up? Have there been problems? Have there been
Oh,
like bias cases, discrimination cases? Are they toxic? How many people were in that job before? Like, is it constantly
yeah.
rotating?
I
I mean,
think I think that job seekers, I think candidates are asking those
yeah,
questions now. I love how much more educated job
yeah.
seekers are now than they were when I first started. They used to rely on the recruiter for
Mhm.
everything. Now, a lot of times they are like they can bring information to the recruiter that the recruiter maybe didn't know. Like maybe they watched
Yeah.
the news that morning. And they're like, "Hey, you guys got class action suit against you." You,
Yes.
yeah, we're like,
Yeah.
"I'm sorry, what?" Like, I'll get that answer for you. Just give me a moment. But yeah, so I think that job seekers doing a lot more are doing a lot more, and it's to their benefit to know who they're going to talk to know, like, they can go on LinkedIn, they can go on, an open web search and search for the person. They can go on the company's website and look up look up who the leaders are, learn about them, read about them. So the same way that we get to know candidates before we talk to them, I think that job seekers are doing the same thing. They're getting to know the companies, they're getting to know the people before they engage, or sometimes before they even answer your email, or your first reach out, your text, your whatever.
So to help people as we're winding up, to be a little positive, I think, well, do you have some advice, whether you're just seeking a new job, whether you want to advance in your company, or you're just trying to pivot or reinvent yourself? Any thoughts what people should do, considering, as you mentioned, and I agree with you, it seems like a tougher market now, and it's not bad, it's not terrible, but it's not great. It's one of those kind of tougher ones,
Yeah.
So what would you suggest to people from their mindset? Like how should they think? How should they act to kind of just get through this time period?
So one thing I will say is, don't get discouraged before you even hit apply. And we see this a lot. A lot of folks are putting up stats that say, oh my goodness, 200 people applied in the past day. And this is how you measure up to those people. 57% have master's degrees, 37% had this number, have this many years of experience, 18% went to this school. And you're like, don't get hung up on that.
Right.
Don't get hung up on that. Ignore that stuff as best you can.
It's hard for people. It's like, guys, I see those numbers too. And it's like, this is crazy. 1,000 people applied. So why should I bother?
That's discouraging. Right.
Yeah.
That's discouraging. And that's not always true. That could mean that many people, opened that job and looked. And that doesn't mean that those 200 people are the right person. So you got to believe at 201, I'm the right person. And here's the reason why. And just be yourself, tell your story.
And can I add this about the numbers?
Yeah.
I'll give you from personal experience. So let's say I'll post a job on LinkedIn, and it'll be, let's turn back the clock a little bit when a remote, because if you put a remote job, number one, you're going to get thousands. Right. Yeah. And let's say I posted something when crypto was hot. So let's say it was a crypto job, remote job, easily could get 1,000+ resumes. But then when I look through all those 1,000, no joke, maybe 5 look okay.
Yeah.
And out of those 5, maybe 2 might be something that could kind of come close. So when you see those big numbers, as Keirsten was saying, take it with a grain of salt. These are people shooting their shot. They're just throwing it out there because you could hit easy apply, so it's easy to send out.
Yeah.
But oftentimes they don't have the right, they're just sending it. They're just shooting it all over the place. So don't get discouraged. So I just wanted to add that, because I see this firsthand all the time.
Yeah. And leverage your network, and don't feel like you only have to search for jobs on LinkedIn, or you only have to search for jobs on Indeed, or you only have to search for jobs on what's it called? ZipRecruiter. Like, you don't only have to focus your attention on one place. Go to the website, what companies you're interested in, go to their actual career site. You don't have to get funneled through a third party portal. Go to their website, look up their competitors, look up other companies in the area. If you know what role you want, search and see what companies hire for that role in your area, or remote, or that have open remote roles. So it's just a matter of folks doing a little bit more work on the front end. And then, like I said, not getting discouraged by seeing, oh, well, this job is, already got 100 people that applied. Because we see that, you'll open a job, and in 2 hours, they'll be like, this job's been open for one day and it has 1,677. I was like, yeah, calm down. It doesn't.
So for people who want to reach out to you, how can they what's the best way? Email, LinkedIn, Twitter, X? What's
Oh
Facebook?
yeah, I'm like, what's it called? I'm I'm at Trap Recruiter everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn. A lot of folks can't spell my name, so I changed my name on there to it's at Trap Recruiter, so it's not at Keirsten Greggs, because people switch the I and the E a lot of times, or they leave one out. They leave the
Mhm.
E or the I out. So at Trap Recruiter is the easiest way. I'm on all of the interwebs, except for I don't really engage on TikTok. But I have an Instagram, I have a LinkedIn, I have Twitter, Facebook. Is that it? Oh, Threads. I forgot about Threads. I like Threads.
Is
Are
that
you on
still
Threads
is that
too?
still happening, or is it
I
slow?
like, I like it because it's smaller and I
Is it? Yeah.
see it and I see everything I want to see. Like I love it. I feel like Threads is fun right now.
So for somebody who's maybe looking for a job or trying to just do something with their career, maybe because now it's a little smaller and not so crowded, do you
Oh no,
think
no,
that's something?
I don't job seek on Threads. No, no, no.
Oh, is that good for job seekers though, or not really?
I've not even
Yeah. Okay.
attempted to find a job on Threads, so I can't speak to that.
Okay. I'll look into that to see,
Yeah.
because, at first when it came out, it was like so hot, and then it
I
seemed to
think
cool off so
came out as
quickly.
like an alternative
Yeah.
to X though. And do you know when is X job starting? And do you think that's really going to be a thing?
I think it's for me, it probably wouldn't, because the kind of people I recruit, they're compliance, legal risk, audit.
Gotcha.
They don't hang out on Twitter X as much. On
Yeah.
LinkedIn, yes. On Twitter X, not so much. But for techies, I would imagine so.
Yeah.
Techies and some other areas, yeah, probably that probably would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then I guess for people reaching out to you, it would be a couple of ways that just because Keirsten looks so super confident and successful, she is looking for other things. So if you have a job and you want to, or you just want to talk to her, see she's a fit for a job, you could hit her up as
Yeah.
well. But
Holler
then
at
if
your
you,
girl.
yeah, but then also if you're looking for some advice, you could hit her up as
Yes.
well. So,
No,
so she's
absolutely.
open. And
Yes,
as you can tell,
absolutely.
she's smart. She knows what she's talking about. She's grounded, down to earth, has good, practical, smart advice. So yeah, so
Thank you,
she's a
Jackie.
great addition to your network. So definitely get in touch with her. And hey, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I think this was great, and I love how you're just so open and honest. And I think by doing that, I think will help other people too, who were scared to kind of come out, if you will, and say,
Yeah.
hey, like I don't have a job, or I'm scared of losing my job, and just be honest and talk about it, because that's gonna help so many people by just putting it out there so others could help. So
Yeah,
so thank you
absolutely.
so much for your great advice and guidance. A lot of people, I think, a lot of people are going to benefit from that,
Thank
Keirsten.
you
So
so
thank
much
you.
for having me.
Well, my pleasure. My pleasure. And I just want to give a shout out to when we talked about how we first met with, Mark Anthony Dyson. I wanted to make sure I
Yes.
gave him a full
His entire name.
shout out. Yes. Not just say Mark. You're like, who's
The
Mark? Say
guy in
Mark
the
Anthony
cool hat.
Dyson.
The guy in the
Yeah.
cool hat.
I actually met him just last week in person.
Did he have a hat on?
No, actually, he didn't have his fedora.
Oh wow.
He didn't have his signature fedora. And I got to tell you, what's so weird? He's a really sweet, lovely guy. And I got to tell you, in
Yeah.
person, even more so.
Oh.
It's
Yeah,
so,
I haven't met him in real life yet.
yeah, it's so weird how you see somebody, you're friends with them online,
Mm-hmm.
and then you like them, but then you meet them in person. Oh my God, why can't he live where I live? Like he's such a, do you ever have that? Like, oh yeah, it's a bummer.
Yes.
Like he's in
Yes.
Chicago. Why can't you be here? He's such a nice guy. It would be great to hang out.
To
So
all my HR friends
yeah,
in Minnesota, that's how I feel about them.
yeah.
I met a lot of them for the first time in a few months ago, I think March. And I was like, is everybody here awesome? Like, is everybody here great? Like, I love it. Every single one of them.
Yeah. Now, is that because like when you get that human in person, like you remember
Yeah.
what it used to be like to have that? You're like, oh, this is a great feeling.
True.
Yeah.
It is
Well,
a great feeling. But
well,
yeah, so Mark Anthony Dyson, when are you going to come to close to the area where I am so that we can meet in real life too. Because now I feel jealous. I mean,
Okay. Wait.
you
So where
guys,
are you? Where are you based?
Northern Virginia,
Oh,
outside of
great,
DC.
great. Okay.
Mhm,
All right, perfect. All right.
mhm.
So he'll come knock on your door. Say hi.
Oh no, I didn't say that.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be a little creepy, huh?
Yeah, but maybe if he's close to New Jersey,
Yeah.
Philadelphia, I might go home and stay with my parents, or if he comes to DC or goes to Baltimore,
There you go.
I can
Perfect.
make it happen. I can make it happen.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
and all the great advice, Kirsten.
All right. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.